Hi Virgo. This is your Taurus season reading, your May 2024 post-eclipse reading. All information to work with me one-on-one is below, as well as the Patreon link, which the extended reading, that's where the extended reading will be, where we get more into what we're talking about here and way more into the transits with my notes and the intuition in the body if that comes up. We always like to check in on the body, especially with you. It's very important. It's where you hopefully recognize you learn from over time. Yes, it is. Oh, nice to be here in your energy. I'm sure money will come up. Yes, it did. But the first things to fall out were reverse 5, reverse page, and reverse knight. At the end of patterns, all of us will begin to exhaust ourselves. Exhaust ourselves so much so at some point that you will understand this, that you can only be who you really are underneath. Or you become very agitated, right? And then past the agitation, it's just deep exhaustion. And I want to say, as a preface to what I'm going to say next, is that it's really important to do what you need to do to connect with yourself, whether it's through help from another professional. And if you work, maybe you need to do art therapy or some kind of art or something to create a space where you can enter a new portal, right? Where you can enter a new opening. That's your opening to your new world, is through this space. In a meditation, it could be through the body. There are kids outside if you hear them in the background. They're having fun. They're giving me funny flashbacks. So especially if you are working towards something right now, it'll become more apparent when you're working on whatever you're working on, like physically, that you got your head down and focused about. And for a lot of you, it looks like money. It looks like adding value to your life. Like, what does that mean, right? Like, Taurus season will ask you all the things of, like, is it passive? Like, for like physically, it's like, is it passive? Do you find yourself even more intuitive right now? What is it? Because what's happening is that, and why I had that preface before, is that this is the quote that came up and it came back. So we're going to talk about it, because sometimes when they don't come back, I just let it go. But it came back and I remembered, is I learned this recently in an interview, and really just a deep friendship, trusting conversation about codependency on both ends. They weren't experts or anything in this, but they know themselves well enough to talk about it and have been going through it, right? When I emotionally respond to something, I know it's something feels true or has hit me. So I don't need like a factual. I'm sensual. And Taurus, the reason why I'm saying this is because next to Taurus season 2 is like the sensuality of it all. And you get it too. You have a deep sensitivity. But when you don't honor that for so long, you get used to being agitated, right? Because you're not honoring a need that you have. So this becomes underneath what seems to be who you are. But then when you get to the deep exhaustion part, where you're just like so tired of being anything else and you need to let it out, it's, for some of you, it could come from being depressed. And the quote is Jim Carrey quote, where you're just tired of playing this character. I'm butchering it, but basically you're just tired of being this. You're so exhausted of playing this role that you're finally exhausting this part of you. You're not fighting with it. You're not running from it, right? The reverse of it all. You're like literally focused and working on it, but there's like such an effort that you're putting in. There's an immense effort, even though you're exhausted. So what the response though is to continue. There's something the pressure, right? The diamonds come from pressure. Oh my God. And I just saw that somewhere in a funny way, and I wish I had that too. But basically, yeah, it's like the best things, right? And yet we want you to take the pressure off of yourself at the same time. Because when a Virgo is having fun and excited, it's never work. right? If you're lit up, if you're doing what you need to do, but you're realizing at this time that it's possible that you've been getting to a place where you are thinking about it, you're finally moved on, especially you're checked out mentally, right? You're finally away from the situation, but then you find yourself almost stuck or at a plateau. Like something was going well for a while, it seemed promising, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, where actually am I? From the 8 to the 5 of Pentacles, it's because you've gotten yourself to maybe, right? Maybe you've gotten yourself to the survival place and it seemed perfect before you had it, of course, right? It seemed exactly what you want when you had it. It's like anytime, and this is in, when you get what you want, sometimes you don't even want it anymore, or you're already on to the next thing. That's a very common thread, especially between creatives, perfectionists, people ambitious. But then you find yourself fighting the exhaustion that you feel because there's something, this is the card that came up, there's something underneath it all where you're being finally exposed to why it is that you're so tired and what part of you can no longer exist as you move forward, because you're starting to build something here. You're building momentum and you may be tired, and people around you may notice that. So when they're coming and caring for you, it's not because they want anything from you. They just want to connect with you. Because if you're at a place where you're not ready yet to connect with people in that way, it still feels extreme and there still feels like there's something heavy being held on to. Again, finding that safe person, finding that outlet, finding that space where you can let go energetically, emotionally, physically. Everyone deserves that in this lifetime, and right now more than ever, because what you're doing is still somewhat fresh in this particular area of your life. There's a vulnerability to it, right? And then being exposed on top of it to yourself, even, there is a vulnerability to that, which is why it's the sun and the baby. The baby is naked on the horse. It's extremely vulnerable. If it falls, it can get hurt. No, right? But we're not thinking about that when we're looking at the card. We're just like happy, right? It's just like, ooh, what a nice card. But like, then where does your brain go? Like, oh my God, like, but like, it's a card. It's not going to be moving. So this reading is like very, let's get down to business. No wonder why I felt like I wanted to wear kind of like a button up leisurely, you know, the way you like to do it. This is healing ultimately, and having you see this pattern that is perhaps has hurt you. It could be, you know, romantic, maybe affecting your romantic life specifically, and has for a long time. Or it's something that really is encompassing in all areas. And it's about, you know, the child in you that needs that attention right now. Because we talked a lot about codependency last month. And, you know, if that's not where you're at, that's fine. Like, you can go somewhere else for whatever it is that you're looking for. But I read the cards intuitively. So you may not realize that it starts with you, of course. And this is a version of you that you've been reliant on to feed this part of you. Like, you're so smart, you have it, but then all of a sudden you go to do it and it's not perfected in your mind. It's that, you know, that's the shadow side of you that people get confused with. When you break through that and you work through that and recognize that your specific brilliance, what you have to offer, is useful no matter where you're at in the process. That's the whole point. That brings you back to being a child, and you remember where you started to develop that instead of recognizing that the process, right? And it's funny because I'm never really drawn to the horse and the sun, but I was. And that's, you know, very Sagittarian. So it's also just fire. It's movement. You are burning a lot off. You're burning out a lot of steam off. So maybe you do want to do both rigorous and balancing, you know, exercises where it can be somewhere where you're holding, you know, specific spot, or you're pulsing, doing isolated movements where you're really focusing your energy, and even though you're not moving too much, but it's still getting out of you a specific energy that is helping. And then maybe you intuitively go to the next. But I definitely recommend stretching anything. I definitely recommend doing healing movement with your body if you can and have the time, because what's coming up and out of you is this connection with, from Three of Swords to Three of Cups, you know, where it is that this pattern was outside of you and then developed within you. Where it is to indulgence, dare I say addiction, you know, even if it's the tendency to, you know, get the specific attention that you're, you know, that you're desiring. You know, it could be that. You know what I'm saying? It could be that. And for maybe the first time in a while, and there could be a Leo that's been highly influential throughout this process. For Virgo rising, it's Leo 12th house stuff, where you were very impacted about 8 months ago, almost a year ago now, and specifically you're becoming very aware of where it is that you know, developed that characteristic, or continuously put into that characteristic of maybe that annoyance or that frustration or that part of you where you had to use as more of like a mask or a shell for what's really in there. And like, of course, we don't have Cancer out here, we're saying shell, but it exists with most of the signs, but especially, you know, you're one of the specialties. And you begin to notice where some of your compassion was perhaps an over nurturing for other people to give you what you really needed, it gave you like that constant reassurance perhaps. And then when something would happen and there's no give and take, you almost feel slighted, so you need to take yourself away from this, and because you know you did it for you, but you have to find that balance of like, how do I say this without, how do I process this, how do I digest this? This is something like deep within me, a deep pattern within me in my heart. This was a part of my support system within me. And you know, you may see money be weird from funky for a minute, but then all of a sudden, as you move through this, it becomes, you know, to come back around, because for a lot of you, you are discovering like this side of yourself in a way that is, I know this is a general reading, but it's a general overlook of, because you're up next for the eclipses, right? The South Node will be in your sign. And you've done this before, and you haven't, for some of you. And allowing yourself to release, allowing yourself to have those moments where you don't have to feel like you have to be the strong one. Even if you're not necessarily even being the strong one, there's still a part of you that may feel like, I still have to like try to be that person, or else maybe I'm not gonna get my needs met, right? And now you're like maybe actively trying to get your needs met and like being serious about it. And the more you move forward in that way, the more that I think you'll see that you're more understood than you realize. But there's this part of you that's becoming detached in that way, because you can give off that you're detached in some ways, but really it could just be a protectant or a defense mechanism, and not to read you so much, Virgo. It's just that if I don't do it, then a Gemini might, or by the time Gemini season comes around. But it's more just to get to yourself, because there's so much more to decide, discover. about yourself. But it's also a time to, because what it really is that it comes down to, because Gemini is also like what comes out. It's also money. It's also transactions. And Gemini would be in your 10th house too, your career. Yeah. So if you have like a normal setup, it would be your career house. I should have all these. I have to learn to write this stuff down, but this is where we're at. So this coming together of something too, right? This something that you're breathing life into, and this is all being breathed into it too. And you're wondering why maybe my money is slow and why the energy is kind of like this, like really interesting wave, right? That's flowing through that, like you see an influx and then not, right? There's this flow, but you have to notice and start to maybe you start to notice and maybe you discover that you need to pay attention to like that. Maybe like, how do you feel at that time, right? How does your body feel? If you don't know how you feel, how does your body feel, right? Name 3 adjectives, 3 feeling words. It's not fine, it's not good, it's not bad. This is how we teach children. This is a child moment where you deserve to be heard and seen, right? If you need a moment before you're ready to move on with this, take one. Take a few, right? We have all these reversed wands at the top, and then we have the upright 6 of wands. You are and will be so ready, and you'll wonder like how you were so exhausted for so long, or for a while. But for some, that experience is like really important in life. And so what I've come to believe is that that's just where you're at, and that's how you're processing this crazy thing called life, and we all are doing it in the same way. It just looks different, right? It just looks very different, and you do need to digest some things. You need to reevaluate. Maybe you have done reevaluating, but now that this is becoming clear, you're making the decisions to say some things or walk away from these parts of you, right? And then another layer shows up of who's no longer good for you anymore, or what habits are no longer good for you anymore. Even if, maybe you want to leave and your coworkers want to go out or do something, and you're always used to having you around, and all of a sudden you say no, but they're like, come on. And the reason why that can happen is because that is your work, is to be like, yeah, just not tonight, like, well, I'll catch you another time. Like, you need to speak up for yourself in these ways that seem so easy, but you would hope that someone could just take your no as a no. But where else in your life hasn't people taken your answers for the answer that they are? Or you give them one answer and then you don't end up doing it, right? You're maybe the flaky, quote unquote, or you just don't know how to say, hey, not right now, and you have some of that stuff. So that stuff will translate in different areas of your life, and it's being communicated to you very well now, and you have a chance to overcome that for yourself. That sets up a different outlook, right? It sets up a different flow of money too, right? So what you're seeing is how the way that you're breathing, right? So if you're not, like, if you notice your breath and it's just like, you notice it's more one way than not, right? Maybe you don't even notice your breath. Maybe you start noticing it more, and maybe you start breathing through your belly every time you notice you're not, and you're like in your heart center. Maybe you do something where it makes you pay attention to your breath. The Lovers is the lungs, and that's why I'm saying this. And then we have Strength in the Sun, a little bit more into like the body parts, which is Leo, and the Sun, which is the heart and the back. So it's all like in this area, and I would even say, like, dare say, is rib cage, right? So this is the area that's being highly emphasized, and that's also where the digestion line lies, right? It's also these yellow colors, which is, in the simplicity of the chakras in that solar center. So this is, and then we have the 6 of Wands, which is like, and then we have the Leo cards and the Gemini card, where it's confidence. What's taking away from what you know and your confidence, and where do you need to move on, right? What is it about yourself that you need to move on from? But then it starts to point you in a different direction, right? Maybe you're in the right place, but you're in the wrong position. Or maybe you're in the right position, maybe it's the wrong place. Maybe it's, I need to mix it up and do both of these things. You know, maybe there's more flexibility in your life that allows you to find spaces for you to be, where it will be easier for you to hide a little, just a little. I know you want to, while you move through this change and you find out what's underneath that layer when you're exhausted. I want to wrap that up full circle. Is like, what happens, you know, what does your breath do then? You know, what does that look like? How do you treat yourself, right? Are you allowed to be tired? If and only if you've worked so hard. Like, can't you just be exhausted from whatever you've been carrying for a while? And I mean that emotionally, and Taurus season is here to say, because they're having enough, right? They're all set with everyone else's. I think that is translating to you as well, where you also need to let go of what's not yours. And if that comes out with you need to take action, speak upon it, or do something about it, you'll do it. If you trust yourself, you'll do what you need to do in the ways in which are best for you right now, because that's where it's like really you're being the force is pushing you. The force of your life, the flow of your life is bringing you towards that. This Eight of Pentacles is like this overall theme is like, this is for you. This is the best for you, and the best for everyone in your life is what comes from this transition, where it's okay to let go of some things in some situations, some people, some habits that, and what happens after that is where the true strength comes in. And it shows you where you've maybe thinking like, and I'm thinking of like when you stay, I think of some people, right? This, you could be also seeing this in a Leo's life. When you see their true strength, but then you realize a lot of their strength is going into maybe another person, right? A situation that there's not a lot of wiggle room around, but they almost need that reinforcement of they're so strong. They need to find it in some area of their life, or that validation, because that's what they think doing the right thing is. And that comes down from many different generations. So I'm not saying that it's not uncommon, but if you ever saw that, like, oh, like that's how they get their validation, is how strong you are, and maybe you learned that or you took that on yourself, you know how strong you are. And sometimes that role becomes exhausting, and all throughout Leo season and the Venus in Leo transit is what I was talking about before. And what's coming back up is the roles that we play, right? What role are you playing in your life? Is it front and center? Is it the leading, right? When you're in a relationship or you're partnered or you're living in a certain situation, maybe you're not always, and you need to share that stage, you need to share that space. But then we have the Lovers, which is two sides. How can you see this dynamic? You know, how can you move forward but also see where, you know, the sun came out and the moon came out, so the light and the dark in it all, you know, both sides to everything, the information. And there's more information to come. There's more information to come, which will be in the second part. I think that's a great space to end. I think you would actually really like that. Of course, even though I want to stay longer, I actually do have plans, and I think it was a good idea to do that with you, because I could talk to you forever. But yes, this month, I know I sound light and strong, but I do want to emphasize that you need to take it easy on yourself this month. You know, you need to do what you can, and that's it. Some people might have issues with it, of course. But it's time to start being very honest, and then this part of you will become less tired. Less tired. Being true to yourself. And to be fair, it seems like whoever doesn't really care about you are the only ones who take a slight to it or whatever. Then you get clear on some really good ideas that you've had, and they're persisting and they want to come up, and thus we continue the onward and upward, but you are facing some stuff this month, and you ought to be proud of yourself and how far you've come and how far you have to go, Virgo, and how much time that you have and can create for yourself now is what we'll get into, okay? And how to continue to focus on your heart, and maybe some practices for the heart and the body and the back. You know, even just laying down flat on the ground is really helpful. Your nervous system too. Okay, we will get more into it into the next part. I'm really looking forward to it. I know that this is not always easy to talk about and hear, but again, if you need further support, and you know, I'm not like I'm not a therapist or anything, so if you need that, go get that. If you need some body care, do that. But if you want to connect further, the links are all below, and the second part will be out about 24 hours is usually how they're coming out right now, but 40 hours after this initial reading comes out. And I did want to tell you that my roses I bought for myself recently are propagating. Crazy. A few of them, not just one. And I gave one to someone, and theirs is doing it too. Maybe if you don't have a plant already, maybe you look at plants. Propagation. See you next month.